Welcome to this panel discussion. My name is Susan Metzger and I'm with Kansas State University. And this morning I have the opportunity to visit with several producers and individuals who work closely with the Ogallala throughout the region. And I'm excited for them to share some of their perspectives of changes that they've seen since the last Ogallala Summit and changes that they think are on the horizons. While this will be a really brief discussion, I hope it really tees up some interesting conversation for when you head into your next breakout session. So to help kick us off, I know many of you that are participating this morning, these faces might be familiar to you, but we'll start with a round of introductions just so that we know who we're visiting with this morning. I'm going to start with the Franklins. If you could introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're from, and what your connection is to the Ogallala.
Yep, so we're Gerald and Tim Franklin from Goodland, Kansas, Northwest Kansas. And we are irrigated producers that have the first water conservation area in Kansas, and always are looking for a way to save on our water usage and make us more efficient.
We're always interested. We always want to be included in the conversation about water. It's always piqued our interest. And so we're looking forward to this.
Thanks, Tim and Gerald. Next, I'm going to go to Dustin. Dustin Meyer, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. My name is Dustin Meyer. I'm the Local Government Services Director for the Panhandle Regional Planning Commission in Amarillo, Texas. PRPC is a regional council of governments established in 1965 under the Texas Local Government Code 391 to encourage local governments to cooperate to improve the health, safety, and general welfare of their residents and to plan for the future development of their communities. PRPC serves the Texas Panhandle region, which consists of 26 counties, 63 municipalities, a population of more than 450,000 people, in an area approximately 26,000 square miles. My department is a pretty diverse portfolio, which includes regional transportation planning, economic development, contract city management, and the reason why we're here today, regional water planning. Something we hear pretty consistently is the importance and prioritization of water as a resource in the Texas Panhandle. This is especially true considering that over 90% of the water in the Panhandle is used for agriculture, and over 90% of the water in the region comes in the form of groundwater. In the capacity of regional water planning, PRPC is the administrative agent and political subdivision for the Panhandle Water Planning Group, Groundwater Management Area Number 1, and most recently, Region 1 Canadian Upper Red Flood Planning Group as well.
Thank you, Dustin. And somebody who works quite closely with Dustin in Texas in the Groundwater Management District is CE. If you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm CE Williams, General Manager of Panhandle Groundwater District. I've lived in Carson County my whole life. In the first few years, I farmed before going to work for the district in 1990 and been General Manager ever since then. As Dustin alluded to, the majority of the water use in the Panhandle is for irrigated agriculture. And I got a couple of graphics that I'd like to put up to show. Here is land values, irrigated versus dry land. And this goes from 1955 up through 2020, but it was pretty stable up until the late 70s and jumped up a little bit in value and then kind of leveled back off. But the point I want to make is the land sales of irrigated land has significantly increased here over the last few years. And the other graphic that I have that I'd like to put up is the percent that's attributable to water. And here again, you can see that it was fairly stable initially and then fell off in the 80s and in 90s and then has recovered back. So you can easily see water is very valuable in the Texas Panhandle.
Thank you, CE. Russell, I'm coming a little bit further north from Texas into Oklahoma. If you want to introduce yourself and share your connection to the Ogallala.
Yeah, my name's Russell Isaacs. I'm producer in Turpin, Oklahoma, irrigated producer, and I'm president of the Oklahoma Panhandle Irrigators. It's an association of growers and members in the Oklahoma Panhandle. We represent 3 Panhandle counties, and we are our goal is to be aware of water and to make good decisions about the water for use. And we've been involved in politically we try to stay involved to be in the conversation about water. And so that's what our association does.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Russell. So next, I have just a grouping of questions that I'm going to share with our panelists and let them kind of answer them from their own experience in that group. And all of them center on changes that we've seen since the last Ogallala Summit, changes that they think are on the horizon for them, all in the vein of thinking about how do we sustain meaningful change and make progress in the Ogallala, and some of that meaning just, even small incremental changes. So CE, I'm going to start with you since you shared those graphics, and that really helps illustrate the changes that you've seen from a metric standpoint in your area in Texas, but from your own perspective, especially having served so long on that groundwater management district. What are some changes that you've seen since the last Ogallala Summit? What do you think are some of the barriers to change, and what's next?
Well, I've thought long and hard about the question of what the biggest change has been. And I guess in my opinion here lately, my biggest change that I've seen is the adoption of technology in water use. Most farmers, and I'm sure Russell does too, have hooked up to their smartphones where they know whenever a machine goes down, whether it's in noon daylight or into the night. Our guys, my son farms, and they go immediately and fix whichever machine is down and doesn't let it sit there and run for several hours. And that's one of the biggest water savings that we've seen, is just making good, efficient use of what they have. But I like the term that was used, continual improvement rather than sustainability, because I think in the Ogallala, sustainability is very hard to define and make any sense of it. But I do think that farmers and ranchers in the water districts and everybody that's associated with it are in a continual improvement mode, to where all the programs we do at the district, and I think the same from the farming community, is continual improvement, because we are dealing with a diminishing water supply. I think some of the biggest barriers to adoption of some of this is just kind of, nobody wants to change, but we all resist change. But in the end, we all know it's going to change. And we really don't know just exactly how, but we need to be flexible enough that we can adopt what changes need to happen, and where we can profitably move irrigated agriculture forward. I think some of the self-driving tractors technologies and planters that turn off as they come to a corner and save fertilizer and seed and chemicals and stuff is just amazing to me, that grew up in the 70s and farmed during that point in time. One of my grandsons the other day was driving one of the tractors. I said, "You don't realize how good you got it." And he kind of laughed at me, and I said, "Well, you just don't want to go to sleep because it's driving it for them, and basically all they have to do is turn around." So, I mean, those kind of technologies that these guys are using, both in planning and farming and irrigation and everything, I think is where we continually improve in efficiency of our water use. And so I think everybody's doing what they can to improve and to keep moving forward. And the continual improvement, I think, is what we need to keep in mind. And one other thing, I think we need to think about, instead of bushels or pounds per acre, we need to think about it in bushels or pounds per applied irrigated inch of water, and start looking at it from that angle, because in most cases, the water is the limiting factor moving forward. And it's, in my opinion, one of our most precious resources.
I agree. Thank you, CE. All of those things really from your perspective, they're the on the ground implementation of continuous improvement. So Dustin, thinking from your role for more of the planning perspective, maybe complement that of saying what you've seen as far as the biggest changes, barriers, and the next steps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan, and great questions. Through the water planning process, we work really hard to engage all the various stakeholders representing very diverse interests and backgrounds to help identify gaps between water availability and resources and water demand. This process has been a very comprehensive and robust process going back to its inception in 1997. One of the challenges that we're currently seeing is as the older generation retires or steps away from the process, it's getting harder and harder to find people interested in serving on these bodies and in this capacity. We're seeing somewhat of a void in people willing to step into these roles, and in particular into leadership roles. Further, with the steep institutional and foundational knowledge that these current members possess, it's going to present a significant learning curve and challenge as we continue the regional water planning process into the future. To date, we've produced 5 regional water plans going back to 2001, and each of them are incorporated into an overall state water plan. I think another challenge is the visibility of these plans and letting people know that they're out there. The plans really do a great job of providing and recommending unique strategies to help conserve water to meet demand, whether it's through adjustment in crop type, applying technology like CE was talking about, or some other recommended strategy. I believe that most folks are working really hard to be good stewards and to safeguard this invaluable resource. And by increasing the visibility of regional water plans, we can further improve participation in the process, coordinate and share best practices among regions, and create an even more vigorous water planning process. I think as stakeholders continue to come together to develop these plans and to plan for the future of water in the region, we're going to continue to move the needle in a positive direction and continue to make improvements in how we protect our water resources.
Thank you, Dustin. So you hit on so many points that I think really help tee up Russell for this next round of questions. So I know, first of all, that Russell is embracing the technology, because the last time I was on a Zoom call with him, I don't know if it was fully automated, but he was doing some strip till while he was actively talking on the Zoom call, which was pretty impressive. But Russell, not only the technology, but talking about what Dustin was alluding to of making sure that you have younger people really engaged in the process, not only from conservation on their own property, but are they actively participating in organizations that can help contribute to that, which I know you're doing. I might mention many that are listening today are probably really familiar with some of the research that Stephen Lauer and Matt Sanderson did. And part of what they found in interviewing producers throughout the Ogallala is that one of their barriers to participating to organizations is, that they're busy. They're busy with their own operation. They're busy with their own families. So I'm curious to hear from you as you talk about the changes that you've seen, the barriers to change, and the future. Also, if you wouldn't share from your own perspective, what motivates you to participate in a conservation organization?
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, you brought up some valid points there, and my motivation has definitely been to help my community out. And I've seen in the past several years, we've seen a lot of adoption of technology, like CE said. I mean, we see growers using, all their pivot controllers on their phone. We see growers. One big thing that I've seen a lot of recently with growers is soil moisture probes, and what it's done. That's been neat to watch people really adopt that technology and to find better ways to irrigate, to be more efficient with their water. And that's one of the big things I've seen in the last several years is that technology, taking off, and we've really learned how to be better at what we do. And that's the key to all of this, is to like CE said, how many, I'll take it even a step further. He said pounds or bushels per unit of water. It's really about, next step is dollars that we can get for that. That's what we're here for, is to make a return on this water. And so I think that's a lot of what I've seen in the last few years is that adoption of different things like that. also, as far as, like you said, is the challenges going forward. It is hard. It's so hard to get young people involved. We are busy. Everybody's busy. They've got families, and it's just, I think they're doing a lot on their farm to conserve and to do better, but to be involved with organizations, such as ours or groundwater districts or doing the, going the next step and making the conservation districts or the groundwater conservation districts. It's overwhelming the time that it takes to do that. And so it's really hard to get a large, get enough people involved to take those steps. And I mean, we're real fortunate to have some young growers that are involved, but it would sure be nice to be able to figure out a way to show the value that we can gain from these organizations, because what it boils down to, and my motivation to do it is I care about my community, and I mean, all of this, Western Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma Panhandle, I mean, we're keyed off of water. I mean, between livestock and grain production and fiber production, if we don't have water, the landscape changes drastically. And so if we can tell that story that being involved can help this last longer and to have our communities thrive, I think that's key.
That's great. I appreciate that, Russell. For sure, in Kansas, we often speak to that the water is not only valuable for producer profitability, it's about community vitality. If that's not there, we don't have community. So I'll come back to you, Russell, but I'd like to hear also from the Franklins, because I think they can really echo quite a bit of what you've said from a technology standpoint. Obviously, with having both Tim and Gerald there on the screen together, you can see visibly how important having sustainability across generations is to them. And also, I know I've visited with Tim and Gerald about this topic before. It's not only about technology, but also about your crop selection and seed choices. So I throw all of that out there to just tee you up so we can hear about changes that you've seen, barriers to change, and then what's next.
Yep, sounds good. We're going to start by telling a little bit about our history and how we got to where we are. And I'll let Dad take over the history side of things.
Years ago, when I was on the water board in GMD4 in Northwest Kansas, we talked a lot about use it or lose it. And fortunately, not our current governor, but the one before, worked real hard in his water plan not to do that. And so it became obvious to us that it was essential that we take some of the responsibility to do what's right in conserving water for our farm, but our community, our state. And so that's what precipitated our involvement in the water conservation area. And I'll let Tim tell you more about that and what the results have been and what we do on our farm.
So we just completed our 5th year of our water conservation area. We set a target for us in our WCA that was about 15% below what they ended up using for a wider Lima in our district. So we were already 15% below that. And at the end of 5 years, we were actually 35% below that target. So we were we used a little over half the water of what the target is now for our neighbors in our region. So that takes into account wet years, hailed crops, real life scenarios that happen to us. When we signed up for this, we had neighbors asking other neighbors, and they would never ask us, but how much did you get paid? Why are you doing this? You're gonna, when's the auction for the Franklin's ground? I'd like to have some of it, or I'd like their tractor. We heard all those rumors. We're still here. We're doing well. Some of the things that have helped us do that, we switched to no-till on our irrigated. We're corn on corn. I don't think we know how to raise much anything else on irrigated. So we're doing it all corn on corn, back into 200 bushel plus corn residue, doing no-till. And that has its own challenges, but the water savings are significant, and that's why we do it. We deal with the other issues. We use moisture probes that you guys have mentioned. We've experimented with variable rate irrigation, with the pivot controls. We do variable rate fertilizer and seed. That's been very valuable for us in this, as well as hybrid selection has been crucial. You know, when we're trying to drop fewer seeds so that our water usage lower, but still raise similar bushels, because as Russell said, it's about profitability. If we're not profitable, we aren't here either. And so, so to gauge whether our method worked or not, we had the opportunity to join in the Nebraska TAPS program for a couple of years. And we wanted to put our system up against other operators to see, I mean, we didn't care if we raised the highest yield. We were trying to obviously be efficient in irrigation, but we wanted to see if we could be in the top 5 of profitability both years. And we were able to do that. The second year we were 3rd, and the first year I think we were 4th or 5th. But we were able to blend all those together, seed costs and water management and marketing, to show that it's possible. Not only others, but it was for ourselves to earn that confidence that, hey, we are on the right track. We are heading down the road that we should be. And the other thing I'll point out about our 5-year, end of our 5-year with our WCA, is the state of Kansas comes out and measures all of our measures wells across the state of Kansas in the first part of January of every year. Since the start of our WCA, the well that they measure in the middle of our land has come up 3 feet in 5 years. And so that's exciting for us to know that it is possible to slow the decline, or even if you have some wet years, that it can come up. And that's just exciting to see when you see it actually comes up and it's not down after year.
I think the thing that was really caught my eye with the use of moisture probes was the fact that we never fill our profile to the very top. We always leave room for 1 inch or 1.5 inch rain if it would happen to come, so we don't have to worry about that runoff. But I'm the old guy. We used to turn sprinklers on the 1st of June and you shut them off the middle of September. But with moisture probes, I'm beginning to think they're more important in wet years than they are in dry years, because when that profile's full, you shut them off. And we've never done that in the past, but we always leave that inch. We always leave room for 1 inch of rain. Is that what we say? So that's a real change in our attitude. It's been a learning process.
That's great. And based on the success of your first 5 years in that water conservation area, you guys have renewed for another 5 years. Is that correct?
So yeah, so we actually signed up for 15 years with 3 5-year cycles. And so we're into the second 5-year cycle. And some of the water we banked, we're actually able to pull forward into the next 5 as kind of a buffer, which was part of our agreement. That we wanted, if we were able to save water, we wanted to be able to use it in the future if we needed it, because we're trying to protect against that dry year. We all have those years where we remember 2012 for us up here, where we didn't get much rain and we needed all the irrigation we could get. And so if we can bank that water to use in that drier year, that's a good thing for us.
We're starting to question now, do we water too much? What's the soil structure? I mean, are we watering so much that we're causing the soil to compact and get rid of the oxygen? And I'd never thought about that before, but with our low gallonage wells, it makes us ask that question even now. Should we shut off a week in July? Should we shut off a week in August? We never did those things, but we do now.
Constant learning. That's great. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time. I wish I could talk for another half hour. I might mention, so what's wonderful is really hearing from what I consider to be true change leaders, especially in the Ogallala and conservation. And I think that the best policy comes from individuals like you, where it's from the ground up, where we learn what's workable and then make those changes. And then planning and policy has to adapt accordingly. So Dustin, I just like to hear from your experience, what you've seen in that change, sort of the bottom up to other approaches for.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. You know, the regional water planning process is a legislatively required process. It was mandated by the 75th Texas Legislature through Senate Bill 1 in 1997. In the early days, it was recognized that it needed to be a bottom-up approach, as there are really no two situations that are the same with regard to water. A good example of this is seen in our work with Groundwater Management Area Number 1, who is responsible for determining the desired future conditions for the aquifers in our region. GMA 1 is comprised of 4 groundwater conservation districts, and each of these districts have unique situations with regard to water, and they all respond to different issues they're dealing with uniquely. And so, I believe kind of a natural progression of the regional water planning process and in working with state agencies like the Texas Water Development Board is for the process to evolve into a more top-down approach. While this is certainly advantage, there's some advantages to having some standardizations with regards to reporting, analysis, and assessments. I think it does limit to a degree the input and creativity that each region can have in the planning process. That being said, I believe the regional water planning process does bring a tremendous amount of coordination among the various stakeholders in planning for and protecting our water resources. And one change that is really positive that happened late in the 5th planning cycle and is going to be carried over into the 5th planning cycle is the Texas Water Development Board has incorporated an interregional group into the regional planning process. This was done to ensure further coordination among the different planning regions, whereas we really lacked that before. And it really does build another level of partnership in the planning process and working towards the future and conserving our water resources.
That's a really interesting approach. I'll be curious to see how that goes, because to me, it maybe is kind of a help meet in the middle of the bottom up and top down, having that related approach. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. So I want to also come back to Russell. So Russell, the Franklins talked about the Nebraska TAPS program, and I believe you've participated in that. If you wanted to share a little bit about your experience with the program.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've been in the OSU TAPS program 2 years in a row now, and I've failed to win yet. But anyhow, it's been a great process to like they said, it's been good to be able to experiment with ideas that you have that you think will work, but it's great to be able to do it on a small scale, controlled environment that it doesn't risk your whole farm, and so we've been able to play around with that, and it's a neat program. I know they did a little bit of a cotton one this past year, and that's, I hope that keeps going, and so there's a lot that can be learned from it, and I think having the competition, I think that encourages people to really get involved in it and try it, and so yeah, I think that's been a good neat program.
Excellent. Competition and a little creativity.
Yes.
Helps motivate some change. That's
Yep.
awesome. Well, we're coming up on the end of our half hour. I want to give the rest of our panelists a chance if you had any last comments you wanted to share with our group to help spur some thoughts as we head into our breakout sessions. Tim, I see you've unmuted. Some final thoughts?
I think it's just, it's important that we look at this from a big perspective as well as looking at it from a farm perspective as well. As Dad mentioned earlier, we want to be on the right side of water conservation in the future. We want our grandkids to say our family was on the right side of conserving water and over the Ogallala. What can we do to be a part of that now, so that our future generations can enjoy the use of the water as we are?
I think times have changed a little bit. I think people don't feel like it's a bad idea to conserve now. I think there was a time when you didn't, when you went to the coffee shop and said it's time to conserve water, you were not greeted well. But I think slowly that process is changing, and I'm really glad to see that. It's going to make a huge difference.
Excellent. Well, I'll say it's changing because of people like you on the screen. So I thank you for that. And I know that the conversation that we've had briefly here over the past half hour is really going to help tee up some meaningful dialogue in the next breakout sessions. So I want to thank our panelists this morning for your time, and most importantly, for what you're doing to conserve and extend the useful life of the Ogallala. So with that, I'll log off for our really wonderful panel, say thank you again, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the breakout sessions.